Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Cape Ann Today. As always, Erika Brown, the publisher and editor of The Cricket, joins me each week to get us caught up on all news Manchester by the Sea and Essex. How are you, Erika?
Hey, how are ya? Good.
Great. Okay, lots going on, right? So let's get right to it. There was a big school committee hearing we need to talk about.
Yeah, it was actually a joint meeting with the school committee, and technically it was also the boards of selectmen for both Manchester and Essex, and the finance committee was there too for Manchester, and many members of the Essex FinCom were there too. So, and when I say there, I'm talking about a packed by my count, 300 people were there in the cafeteria last Tuesday of the Manchester-Essex Regional High School. And it was packed, and that's in person. And there were an additional 100 and something people tuning in on Zoom online. So it was a big deal. And let me tell you, just to paint the room was filled with teachers, parents, and students from kindergarten up to graduates. There was a graduate from last year who spoke, and they were all, many of the kids had signs protesting the cuts. And this is all about the cuts that are now being recommended by the school district administration, that is in response to the fact that Essex did not pass a 2.5% override, a proposition 2.5 override 2 weeks ago at the ballot. It lost by a good 20-30%, but it had passed at the annual town meeting. And this was passing, I think it was $287,000 override was not passed by the voters. And as a result, now the school district has to produce, they don't have to, but the shortfall is 700 and something thousand. I just want to make sure I get this right. It's a $29 million, almost $30 million budget, $29.75 million FY24 school district budget. And they are looking for $781,000 to bridge the gap that is required because this Proposition 2.5 override didn't pass. And now what happened in this hearing was the school committee, the FinCom, the BOSs, they all got to see the tangible results of the recommended cuts, which would disproportionately hit language programs, world language, and in particular, it would just get rid of the French program, which is very, very popular and actually very successful. I mean, we have an award-winning school district for a reason, and this is one of them, is the fact that we have things like French, a really, really solid French program. And people really love it, but it was also the arts, STEM programs, also got hit. And so the kids were all showing up. There was interesting. I'm going to give you two ends, right? On the one hand, we had this little kid, Reese from Essex. He's in kindergarten. He's one of the cutest looking little puddles of a kid. He's just, and he had a sign that said, "I won't ever know what's been cut because I'm just starting my school." He had this sign. And then on the other end, you had somebody like Charlie Weld, who graduated last year, and she was so proud because she's one of 3 of her classmates. Think about this, is a graduating class of like 115, 120 kids. 3 of them got into Berklee School of Music. She's one of them. She stood up and she was kind of funny, but also very compelling. And one of the things she said is, I've never studied music outside of public school. That was kind of a powerful statement. She said, I didn't have private lessons or anything like that. And I got into the Berklee School of Music. And then the other thing she said was, this was the funny part. She said, for all you people who don't understand what that is, it's kind of like the D1 of music. So she was translating into sports, which of course everybody does know about. And so anyway, there you go. Here's the deadlines that they're facing. Next week on the 4th of, I think it's the 4th. Did I say the 4th or the 6th? Actually, the 6th. I'm sorry. 6th of June is the deadline for them, the district, to do one of 3 things. They have 3 choices. One, they can go through with this recommendation of the full cuts, because they've already done that, right? Here are the full cuts, and here's what they would look like. And I just described them. Number 2 would be, don't do anything. And there were a lot of people who showed up and said, we don't want you to do anything. We want you to bring this back to the Essex voters, and we want to push this through. And that's actually a real possibility. But then there's that kind of thing, that rung, where's the rung on the ladder in between those two things, the compromise, right? And the compromise is where you start getting into interesting stuff. So what are the cuts? And then you get this kind of drumbeat that's coming from even the most hawkish people. You get these people who are like, you know, they're in every school district. They, you know, school committee people are like fiscal hawks, like, you know, do they really need fruit for lunch? Why don't we give them chips? You know, like, you know, people who just think that, you know, those nasty kids, they're so expensive. And you get those people, and those people pride themselves on being financially responsible. Well, those very people are saying, why don't we hit the reserves? Why don't we hit the reserves? And the reason why they're doing this, because they're seeing these kids saying, don't take our programs. And they're watching these teachers stand up and say, you're taking away my jobs, my livelihood. And the big risk that they're taking is that these teachers who are really, really good are not going to feel so stable, and they're going to look for another job somewhere else. They're going to leave, and we're going to have a talent drain. So that's also a very real possibility. So all that stuff is going on. To boot, there's another deadline that not a lot of people think about, but it's an internal deadline for the administration. They have to notify teachers whether they're going to renew on the 15th of June. So that's also floating out there. So whatever they do, there's kind of this big if-then scenario. So we'll see, it'll all play out. Honestly, I can't tell where they're going to land. I am going to do a piece next week, and we should maybe talk about it. Maybe not, maybe it's too wonky, but I'm going to do a piece on the idea of reserves, because you definitely have this kind of this reserve concept, this far away, you know, kind of not very specific term called reserves, which is basically your savings account. And what is the best practice for reserves? Well, why do you touch it? Why don't you touch it? How should you, you know, tap it? And why is it such an easy thing for people to go to? That's the kind of stuff that Heather Atwood loves to talk about. Yeah. A little wonky.
Right. Well, I mean, it's going to be a pretty fascinating couple of weeks. I mean, these decisions are going to be made on the fly now. So
yeah, and the pressure is really on Essex, and hopefully the relationship between the towns comes out of this in a really nice place, a good, productive place, not like happy Pollyanna, but a nice, respectful kind of relationship.
Okay, well, we'll certainly be tuning in to you, Erika, for the follow-up on that. Do we want to do a quick follow-up on the recent elections?
Yeah, because it's funny, we haven't talked about it, but it happened a little while ago. It happened like, what, 2-3 weeks ago? It was, you know, in town, there was this kind of incumbents or establishment versus challengers. And the challengers kind of really did offer up a very interesting conversation. We had the forum several weeks ago, and in the end, the challengers didn't make it. However, so everyone kind of, the incumbents and Susan Philbrick, who was appointed to the planning board, she got a lot of votes and she won. Chris Only on the planning board won. He was being challenged by Donna First, very popular, she did an excellent job on the candidate forum. She was running as a challenger, endorsed by Manchester Matters, but honestly, to listen to her in the forum, she was extremely she seemed very open-minded and very, but anyway, and then Marty Flood, who, by the way, I think Marty Flood kind of put a lot of people off because of his style. He's got this, I told him after the forum, you're a really strong cup of coffee. But I mean that as a compliment. It's not a bad thing. He's just the kind of guy who he's the guy in the room who'll come out and say it, right?
Blunt, right.
Exactly. Yep. And that's actually, that doesn't bother me. I don't have a hard time with that. But, and by the way, if you listen to the content of what he said, as opposed to the style, he was kind of interesting and would have had some interesting thoughts. But anyway, so he also didn't win. And on the Board of Selectmen side, Karen Bennett, who's the treasurer for Manchester Matters, she did not make it against the incumbents on the select board, which was John Round and Ann Harrison. So a great effort, a very interesting season. I think people learned a lot. There were a lot of important issues, and it was awesome. And everyone did a great job.
Yeah, spirited races indeed. Okay, thanks for that, Erika. All right, lastly, let's talk Out and About. This summer guide that the Cricket has released. Yeah.
I'm so happy it's out. And that is something that it's a preview of the summer arts and entertainment season all around Cape Ann. So, and it's a 48-page full color tab that has great articles on the Gloucester 400th. I mean, Gloucester over indexes because it's such a big year for Gloucester, and this summer is going to be so spectacular, especially driven by the Gloucester 400th. So it's not so much their programs, although their programs are going to be awesome, but it's all the people who are do everything every year anyway. The Schooner Fest with Maritime Gloucester, you get the Horribles Parade, like all these things are going to be supercharged with a 400th kind of injection, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's going to make it so much fun. So we did a big piece on the Gloucester 400th. We did a piece on that Edward Hopper exhibit, which is going to be amazing at the Cape Ann Museum. I mean, truly, that's going to be so important. Anybody who is interested in going to museums or in art must go to that show. They've got 65 pieces from Edward Hopper. Most of them came from the Whitney Museum and the Brooklyn Museum in New York. It's a huge kind of milestone for the Cape Ann Museum, which the Gloucester the Cape Ann Museum Green Campus, on the Rotary on Grant Circle. Most people think, oh, that's a modern kind of different campus for them. Underneath it really is the fact that they have all the security protocols that enable them to receive works like the ones that are going to be here. So the promise of that whole bet for them is paying off now with this exhibit. So that's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
And then of course we did an awesome piece called Perfect Days at Cape Ann, which were different people talking about their ideas of not secret spots per se, because I wouldn't want to say that, but just things that they think are awesome. And Lenny Linquata did an awesome piece on really something that everyone thinks they know about, which is Stage 4 Park and the Boulevard. And he talked about being a kid growing up, like his grandfather and grandmother's house was like just above the man of the wheel. So kind of when he was a little kid with all his cousins, they used to play on the boulevard. So when he walks on the boulevard, like those memories are just there for him. And it was very soulful, actually, the way he talked about it. Even when he was talking about the fact that when he was a little kid, they used to convince tourists to throw quarters into the water.
Go get them.
He did that, then he could like dive and go get them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love that. I love that story. Anyway, but then he talked about Ravenswood Park and Stage 4 Park and like just how awesome that was. By the way, he talked about Walton.
Mason Walton, the Hermit.
Walton, which you did that awesome piece on the Hermit of Ravenswood Park.
Fascinating character, yeah.
Yeah, so he talked about that. So that was great. And then we had Kory Curcuru talking about the art of the pub crawl in downtown, the non-drivable, the walkable pub crawl.
That's right. Right, what you know, folks. Yeah. To celebrate the edition, Erika. Yeah, I actually was in a pub crawl yesterday, as a matter of fact, just to celebrate the edition of being released. I might have to reread to see where I ended up.
Oh my God. My favorite line of yours was that if you went to Machaca or the Jalapenos, the tequila drinks could come with their own sense of regret 12 hours later.
They certainly do.
I certainly know that's my experience.
So, Erika, so is the idea for Out and About to be an annual guide? Could it be seasonal as well? What are the thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's a little we're definitely going to do it every year. My idea is that we do it once a year and then cover all the events that come from post Memorial Day right through October through plein air. Or actually in Manchester, we have the Cardboard Box Regatta and the Carnival. Those two are probably the last two events, but through October. And it's just a thing that gives people sort of a kickoff to the season and they're going to hold on to. We'll probably do more things digital next year, and this year too. We'll start to experiment with it. And in terms of twice a year, I could see us doing maybe a holiday thing, because we already do a holiday supplement in November. And I feel like the one thing missing with the holiday supplement is all the events that go through March.
And it's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on January, February, March, And
I love the fact that Cape Ann can experience the real idea about Out and About on Cape Ann, which actually came from a column that used to run in the Cricket, which was more of a society column, like society people. That's not what this is. But what I like about it is I really want locals to really enjoy and expand their enjoyment of local areas that, people get into their own neighborhoods, into their own grooves. And it's really nice to kind of get out of it. And I'm intrigued by the idea that how do people see Manchester? I suspect I know how.
Yeah.
But maybe you could give them a new way of looking at these communities. And like Carrie McKenna did a great piece on Annisquam. I don't think a ton of people go to Annisquam and go biking in Annisquam.
It's
And then
beautiful.
when you bike, you get to see places you never would see if you're just driving through.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing I like. So yes, definitely want to do it every year.
And it's what's special
And
about
I'll
Cape
always
Ann.
take pub crawl ideas from you.
Oh man, you need them. I can do one almost weekly for you. But I think what's special, Erica, is Cape Ann is truly it's a destination area, but it's also a great staycation area as well for locals to learn.
I honestly
Explore.
just felt because it's funny. I talked to Tess McCoglin and from Discover Gloucester and the Gloucester 400 folks, and what was so interesting, and that was the trigger for the article. It was we think about them promoting Cape Ann to everyone far and wide, internationally even, to like come and visit us because we're so spectacular. But the truth is, people live here because they love living here, or they love it because they grew up here. And the idea of a staycation or just having a great weekend is, I think, really great. I think that's the thing to me. So
Yeah. And another thing that's great about Out and About is it got delivered to how many homes?
oh, a lot.
Right.
God, I mean, every single home in the city of Gloucester and business, the
Yeah.
city of Gloucester, Rockport, Essex, Manchester. So a lot. Yeah,
Phenomenal.
tens of thousands.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Erica. Congratulations to that, to you and the cricket for Out and
Thank
About.
you for help. Yeah, you were awesome,
Yeah.
honestly.
All right, let's catch up this time next week.
Okay, bye.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.